Thank you for joining me for designing multi-device applications with FireUI and TMultiView at CodeRage 9. My name is Sarina Dupont, and I'm a Senior Product Manager at Embarcadero Technologies. Now, what is FireUI? FireUI is Embarcadero's collection of multiple technologies that allow you to easily develop applications for multiple form factors, platforms, target devices, etc. And it consists of three key technologies. The UI Form Designer that has support for designing for each custom view. So for each key form factor, we have a view available. So for example, an Android 5-inch view, an Android 7-inch view, etc. And at runtime, it will detect the most closely matched view and display that view on your target device. We also have a new TMultiView component, and the TMultiView component automatically adjusts its presentation depending on form factor and orientation. So for example, you can display it as a drawer on a phone and as a dock navigation panel on a tablet in landscape mode, or a popover navigation. You can also fully customize the MultiView component. You can adjust functionality such as the sliding duration of the drawer, whether or not the drawer overlaps with the main content that you're seeing in your application, whether it pushes the content off screen. You can also adjust the touch target size in regards to how responsive the drawer is. When it comes to dock navigation, you can adjust the width, etc. So it's fully customizable. Using our behavior services, we have built-in behavior for each of these multi-view presentations for each target platform. Now, they can also be overwritten, and you can easily just disable them if you want to fully customize the multi-view presentation for a particular target, for example. So if you didn't want to display the multi-view as a drawer on a phone, for example, you could switch platform behavior to drawer, panel, popover, or custom if you wanted to create your own custom presentation for that multi-view component. Now, the multi-device designer makes it really easy to design user interfaces across multiple devices. And we have a set of predefined views, and those include Windows views, Mac views, Android views, and iOS views. Of course, you can also add your own custom views. So let's say you are targeting a very specific form factor, such as a Moto 360 watch. You could create your own view, create a package for it, install it into the IDE, and then you can design for that particular view. And at runtime, it's going to detect that view and display the view that you designed for the Moto 360, for example, instead of displaying another Android view. We also extended the native desktop styles to have the same UI elements as mobile. So when you're designing a multi-device application, this allows you to easily have a very similar UI that includes the same UI elements such as glyph buttons, etc., across all your platforms that you're developing for. And again, it's one project and a single form across all the different devices, and you have shared UI code and event handling. You can also select on each view, you can add your own code to customize how that view is presented, what code you want to have executed, etc. But each view inherits the code from the master. Now, when it comes to user interface styling, we have native user interface styling built in for iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac. On iOS, that includes a 1x, 2x, and also 3x resolution to account for the larger form factors such as the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. On Android, we have 1x, 1.5x, 2x, and 3x resolution. On Mac, we have 1x and 2x for Retina, and on Windows, we have 1x resolution. So those are all the default native styles. We also have premium styles that are available and are supported on all four platforms. So if you have a quick look here at the screenshot, you will see that we have, in addition to the native user interface styling, we also have premium styles. And they're available as part of our premium style pack. You can also, of course, create your own custom styles using the bitmap style designer that's included with the product. Now, let's talk a little bit about modernizing existing VCL Windows applications. There are many different built-in VCL styles that you can apply by just going to Project Options Appearance in your VCL application to fully customize the look of your VCL Windows application. We also have premium VCL styles. And for many of the premium VCL styles, there is a matching FireMonkey style counterpart. And what that means is you could update the look of your VCL Windows application and then create companion apps, such as a tethered application like you see in the screenshot here for a mobile photo wall, or an application that you are deploying, let's say, in your warehouse where it's a barcode scanner application, for example, and it's running on a mobile device, and it checks the inventory that you have in your warehouse against the inventory application that's running on your desktop machine. So you could have them have very similar user interface styling by using custom styles. So let's get started with some demos. So here's an application that I built for this demo. It's an HR manager application, and this application uses the MultiView and also many different UI elements. And you can show and hide UI elements across the different views depending on your target form factor's screen real estate. So in this case here, what I've set my style to Windows on the master, and all the user interface styles across Windows and Mac have been extended to have the same user interface elements as their mobile counterparts. So for example, here you can set a bookmarks tool button, and it has the same styling that you would have then on, let's say, iOS, in the sense that when you switch this to your iOS application, you're going to get a styled bookmark button. And when you switch it to Windows, you get a style bookmark button. The glyph will look different, but you have the same style elements available. So you can build a universal user interface, so to speak, that has matching UI elements. The form and master view is where you're going to be developing your application, designing the user interface for your application, but also be defining most of your application logic. When we go into each of the views, you can also define application logic on each of the views, but it's really good to design your UI and define your application logic as much as possible on the master view. So the created views here are the views that we've created and we selected from the available views, and these are predefined views. Available are the additional predefined views that you can select from, or custom views that you have installed. So let's say you're working with a custom form factor such as a Moto 360 watch. You could easily create your own custom view, create a package, install it into the IDE, and then you would see that view here. And then you would add that view to your project when you're deploying your application. And then it would select that view at runtime. So for example, you could design a watch interface by defining a custom view. So let's have a look here at our application. The MultiView component consists of a parented list view that's aligned to the client, and we also have a toolbar that's aligned to the top. And the MultiView component is a container, so to speak, so you can parent many different types of controls to it. However, it's really designed to be used for navigation, and so lists are a common element when building application navigation. So what we have here is we have our MultiView component, and if we select our mode property, you can see that it's set to platform behavior. And what that means is that at runtime, it's automatically going to behave a certain predefined way that we have set. So for example, on an iPhone, it's going to display itself as a slide and drawer. So this company employee's navigation on the left here, the list, is going to be hidden by default and invoked via a swipe, for example. On an iPad, it's going to be shown as a docked panel in landscape mode, and then as a slide and drawer in portrait mode. So we have various predefined behaviors that are invoked at runtime via the platform behavior mode. If you wanted to overwrite that particular behavior for a specific view, you could just select the mode property and then toggle it to the view option that you want. So for example, the drawer option, a panel, or popover, or custom. Now, for each of these options, we also have some settings that you can define. So for example, for the drawer, we have various drawer settings. We have the duration sliding, so how long is it going to slide for? The mode, overlap detail view, or we also have pushing detail view. So overlap means that when the drawer comes in, it's going to overlap and cover the content that you're seeing in your application, your detail view content. Pushing means it's going to push that content over to the side as the drawer slides in and it makes space for the drawer to show. Placement is the left or right placement of the drawer and how it's invoked, meaning you would swipe in from the right if it has placement on the right, and if you would swipe in from the left if it has placement on the left side. And the touch area size, and that's where you can define the touch target size as you like. Then we also have different properties for some of the other options, such as pop over. You can again select appearance duration, so at what speed it comes up and how it appears when the pop over is shown. The pop up height, the height of that pop over when it's shown. You can work with styles. You can also set the color, etc. Then we also have our control size, and that's the height and width of our multi-view, and you can set that to the size you like. And we also have the split view option. So for example, whether or not the list, the multi-view component is shown on the right or left. So by default, it's on the left, but you can toggle that as you like. Now let's have a look at our toolbar here. And this toolbar has a label for the application title and two buttons. It has my refresh tool button here, and this is just this T-speed button aligned to the right that I've set to refresh tool button. And then we also have another speed button. It's our details tool button. And if I set that to visible here, you'll see this is the three-line icon that you usually see as another way of invoking the drawer menu. And many applications today that you likely are using on a frequent basis are using that paradigm as part of their user interface. So you can either swipe in the drawer or you can click on that icon to show the drawer navigation. And the way that that is defined here too is if we go to our multi-view component, we have a master button property, and that's set to speed button 2. And that is this button. And what that allows me to do is say, okay, I want to invoke the multi-view with its platform behavior that we've defined, both using the standard way via the platform behavior, such as being able to slide in a drawer on an iPhone in portrait mode, and also by clicking the master button. So let's have a look at some of the other views. So here we have an Android 5-inch view. So for example, here you will see that we're hiding some of the user interface that we have defined on the master. So here I have a separate list control, tablet HR list. And this is a list that I've named tablet HR list to make it easier for me to identify as I'm going between my views that is a section of UI elements that I want to hide on all form factors that aren't at least a tablet size. So for example, if I switch to my Android 5-inch view, you'll see here that I am not showing the tablet HR list. If I go to my Employees tab, tablet HR list, you'll see that it's set to invisible. So visible is set to false. And here, of course, you can also adjust like the height and width, for example, of your memos to fit for that particular form factor. So if I go to iPhone 4-inch here, I can adjust the height, for example, of my memo here. You could change the font. So for example, here I could go in to text settings for iPhone and set the font to blue if I wanted to. So you can fully customize the UI for each of your views as you like. If you go to iPad here, you'll see that I have that additional UI section, and it's set to visible. So again, if I go to tablet HR list, that's my list box here, and I go to visible, you'll see that it's set to true, because on a tablet form factor like my iPad, I've set that to true because I have a lot of additional screen real estate available. OS X is the same. I have a lot of screen real estate available, and I want to be able to show that section of my UI when the application is run on a desktop. So for example here, if you wanted to adjust the width and height of this particular button because you didn't want it to run so close to the bottom of the toolbar, you could go to the margins property here and you could set top and bottom properties. So you could fully customize those to adjust the presentation of your UI element. So you can see here I've made that control smaller by adjusting the bottom and top margins for that particular button. So if I switch now to Windows here, you see it has the same UI as my master form, because on the master form I had set the style to Windows. And then of course if I go to an Android 10-inch tablet, again I have a lot more screen real estate. I'm going to want to show the tablet HR panel. And this is just done by toggling the visibility of this whole list box, and I just select it and I set my visibility to true or false. Now let's have a look at what this looks like at runtime. So for example, here I have my iPhone. I'm going to deploy this to iPhone on my simulator. So here you see the app running on my iPhone, And you can see here I have my master button, and I can show and hide the UI either by swiping it in or by using my master button. Now let's see what this looks like on an iPad. So here you see that in portrait mode, I have my button for invoking my menu, and I also can swipe it in if I didn't want to click on the details button. And if I now rotate my device, let's say rotate left, you can see that if I'm rotating my device, I now no longer see that button because I have my docked panel. And again, you could easily align this docked panel to the left or right. Now, you can also work with custom styles. So I'm going to go back to the master view here and select Stylebook. And when working with styles, you're going to want to load the appropriate custom style when you're working with custom styles for each of your views. So when working with the master view, place your stylebook onto the master, and then select the premium style that matches the style setting you've set here. So in this case, I've set it to Windows. So I'm going to load a premium Windows style. So for example, my Emerald Dark style. Click Apply and Close, and then on your form, you're going to want to go to the Stylebook setting and set it to Stylebook. This will apply the custom style to your Windows view here. And so now if I go to my Android view, I'm going to want to load my Android style. The premium Android style has different resolutions built right into it. So it has graphics for 1x, 1.5x, 2x, and 3x resolutions built right in. So for example, here I'm going to select the FMX Android style, and I'm going to select the Coral Crystal style. As you can see here, this is one of our other custom styles, and that I've now applied to my Android view. And if I go to iPad, I'm going to want to select my iPad style. And I'm just going to go through some of the different styles that we have available as part of our premium style pack. So for example, I'm going to select the iOS Sterling style. It's a nice light style. If I go to iPhone, I'm going to select a different custom style. So going back to my Android style, my stylebook here, and I'm going to select the iOS Emerald Dark style. And then you can go to, let's say, OS 10. For OS 10, you're going to want to load the OS 10 style. Such as the Emerald Crystal style. So you can see that you can easily customize the application UI using premium styles as well. Now you can also, of course, customize the UI for each of the views when working with the custom styles. For example, here I could say I want to move the button over to the right some more, and I could easily just adjust the margins to change the position of that particular control. Now when working with FireUI, you can also use FireUI to extend your existing VCL apps to FireMonkey. And for example, here I have a tethered desktop application. This is a photo frame application. Basically, I'm going to take my photo application here that I have designed for iOS and Android, and I'm going to run that application on my iOS device and my Android device. I'm going to be able to send a picture back to the desktop wall application. When it comes to the premium style, so let's say you have a desktop wall app here, you can go to the project options for VCL, and you can easily change the appearance of your UI. So in this case, for example, I have Emerald. Emerald is one of the styles that we have a matching style for on the FireMonkey side. So you could select that, run it on Windows. Let's see right here. And if I switch back to my mobile application, I have a very similar style on mobile. Of course, has the mobile UI elements, etc., but the color scheme will be very similar. And so that's a nice way of building and extending an existing VCL application to mobile if you want to work with custom styles. So for example, here, if I switch to Android view, I could load my custom Android style. This is my Emerald Dark Android style. see this is my Emerald Dark Android style. And then you can have your iPhone style, your Android style, and you can have your VCL style. It has a very similar theme. The same is also the case if you go back here to project options on the VCL side and you select another one of our custom styles, such as Jet, and you run that on Windows as your VCL application. Now you go to your mobile application, and I'll select my iPhone 4 view, Stylebook, and now I'm going to load the iOS Jet style that we have. Here's iOS Jet style, and then on Android, I'm going to load the Android Jet style. So here you see that we have our VCL application that's running on Windows, and we have an application we built for mobile, and this is actually one of the demos that's included with XE7 that is tethered to this desktop application. So we can take a photo with our application here on iOS or Android and then send it to our VCL application. And in this case, we're using a tethering component, and it's set to network, and the desktop wall application is also using a tethering component and set to network. The other option, of course, is to select Bluetooth, which is a new feature in XE7. So I'm going to take this mobile application and I'm going to deploy it to my iOS device. So here you see the app running on my iOS device with my Jet style. And here you see the app on the Windows side running on my Windows machine. This is my VCL Media Receiver app. And if I go back here to my Mac and you see my iOS device is connected, I'm here in the studio and I'm going to take a photo. Select Use Photo. And then here you see the photo that I just took with my iOS application. So we've also extended our existing Metropolis UI styles to include the same UI elements as their mobile counterparts, and those are the touch styles. So for example, I can apply my Metropolis black touch style here to my application, and you'll see that it has the Metropolis touch style applied to it. And this is our Windows 8 styles. And all the Windows 8 Metropolis styles, there's 4 of them, have been extended to include the same UI elements. And those are the Metropolis UI touch styles, and they're included with RAD Studio XE7. So now I'm going to open it up to some questions. I think there was another question earlier about where the user can get the premium styles, where customers can get the premium styles, and they're actually part of our RAD offer. So if you go to embarcadero.com/RAD offer, there is a link from there. And if you purchase XE7, you get access to the premium styles, and that includes the FireMonkey premium styles as well as the VCL premium styles. And one of the things that I showed in my presentation today is how you can match the VCL UI to your FireMonkey UI using premium styles. So for example, the Emerald style, it's a custom premium green style that we have for VCL and FireMonkey. So you can modernize the look of your VCL application by applying one of the premium styles and then build an extension to it, for example, via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth tethering, and have that same style across your FireMonkey app as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. I thought that looked really nice. And actually, we were talking, a question came up during my session about styles and views. And you were saying that if you want to apply a style, you should apply it on the child views, not the master view?
You should apply it on the master first and then each child view. So for example, on the master view, you place your style book onto the master. On the master, you have a style set, right? When you're working on the master, you can select from iOS, Windows, Mac, or Android. Whatever you have set as your style on the master, let's say it's Windows, you want to load as the style that you're applying to that master. So if I have it set to Windows on the master, I want to load my custom Windows style on that master. That's the first part. Then you switch your form to style book so that it applies the style. And for each child view, you want to load the style. So if I have an iPhone view and an iPad view, I want to select that style each time.
Okay. And then how do you change those styles at runtime?
In what regard? In regards to the way they appear?
If you wanted to switch styles out at runtime.
We have some sample code, I believe, that shows you how you can switch styles at runtime. I think it's on our documentation. I think it's on docwiki.embarcadero.com. There are some examples on how to load and apply styles at runtime.
Yeah, I remember seeing that sample. I just don't remember how that works offhand. How about creating custom styles for applications?
So in regards to creating custom styles, we have the Bitmap Style Designer. So the styles that you saw today, we have both native styles that are built in for iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac with FireMonkey, and also support for custom styling. So if you want to build your own custom styles, you can use the Bitmap Style Designer. These are bitmap-based styles, and when, let's say, you're working with Android, you're going to want to create a 1x, 1.5x, 2x, and 3x resolution style. And what that means is when you're creating your custom style, you're going to want to supply graphics on those resolutions. So let's say a 1x resolution is a 500 by 500 pixel graphic. Then you're going to want a 1.5x resolution, right? It would be 750 by 750, etc. You're going to want to scale that up so that your graphics are crisp across the different Android devices. And what that happens is if you're building your style, there are templates right in the Bitmap Style Designer that you can select from. And you can export to, let's say, a graphics application like Photoshop or whatever graphics editing application and design application that you're using. And then you can create your own custom styles. It's important to supply different resolutions for the different target platforms to ensure that the UI looks crisp. And so what happens at runtime is we'll detect what the device resolution is, and then we'll load the most appropriate style for that device resolution. And that ensures that the icons look at the correct size, look crisp, etc.
Okay. So how do you make a view for all devices, for example, on Android?
Well, you could just have, so that's a good question. With Android, if you just have a one Android view and you put whatever UI elements you want on that Android view, that's going to be the one that gets shown at runtime. If you don't create any views and you just work with the masters, you're going to get that UI across Android at runtime as well. It's just that the views allow you to customize the look for all the different target platforms and in some target devices. In some cases, in a lot of cases, having the same UI may work for you. Let's say you're just building a tablet application. You lay it out on the master, you resize your form to fit, let's say, an iPad, the Nexus 7 or Nexus 10 size tablet, and it will work properly, and that's the way you want it to be. But if you're designing an application for, let's say, a phone and a tablet, you're working with a lot less screen real estate on a phone form factor, and you're going to want to customize your application accordingly. So just like I showed in a demo today, you may have certain UI elements that you want to hide on your phone form factor. So the desired workflow would be to work with your master, lay out your application. And one of the things I showed is that I had a special list box with a bunch of UI elements that I named tablet list box. The reason I did that is so that when I work with my phone form factors, it's easy for me to go through my structure pane and deselect the elements that I don't want to show. So I can easily identify which elements, for example, in phone form factor I want to hide by looking at the tablet, I think it was tablet HR list. And that was my list box element that I only wanted to show on a tablet. So I named it accordingly so that if I look in a structure pane and I'm on a phone form factor, I can easily say, oh, that's the one I want to set to invisible.
That's a good idea. I like that. How to make views different only on platforms, not device type. I think about to have different on iOS and different on Android on any device.
Well, you can create a view for just iOS and a view for Android, right? You can select, for example, an iPhone and an Android 5-inch view. Then if you're running an iOS, if you're running that view, or if you're deploying to iOS, you're going to get that iOS view because you've gone through the steps of customizing and creating a view. So when you look at the views, you will see the available views and the creative views. There are no creative views unless you've selected one of the available views. You select one of the available views, it creates it for you, and you'll see that in the list under created. In that case, let's say you have an iPhone view and an Android view. At runtime, it will select what you've designed on that iPhone view across all your iOS devices and what you've designed on the Android view across all your Android devices. One thing I wanted to mention is that we have a really great MultiView demo, and I think you may have shown it in your...
I did show it.
Right, and that's one that's included with RAD Studios. So if you go to your samples folder and you go to mobile samples user interface, you can select that MultiView demo, and it'll give you a good idea of some of the different properties. I know I showed them as well, but there's a lot of different things you can do. So, for example, we have the behavior services that at runtime automatically load some of the predefined behavior that we have set for each of the target platforms, orientations, etc. for TMultiView. But you can also override them. So if you select the mode property in MultiView and let's say, okay, I don't want to use the platform behavior on my tablet. I want to set it to a panel at all times. Then you can just select that property, and for that view and that size of a screen, it's going to automatically load that behavior that you've defined.
So here's a question. What's the best way to handle screen rotations on a device?
Well, you can, for example, if you wanted to have a very different UI, you could work with two different forms. If you wanted to have one that's entirely different. One thing I would recommend doing is when you're working, for example, with the MultiView component, it has that predefined behavior for your UI elements so that you're parenting to TMultiView. So an example would be if it's in portrait mode, it would automatically hide whatever you have parented into the MultiView. So for example, your list, like I showed in my demo, if it's running on landscape mode, it would show it as a docked panel. You can use a form resize event, and you could load a different form if you wanted to have a very different UI for landscape than portrait. And we actually have a forms example, and I believe it's under samples, mobile samples, user interface, and you can find a forms example there, and it has two different forms, one for landscape and one for portrait, and it shows you how to use form resize to load the correct form. And that would be something that you would only want to do if you had very specific UI, a very specific UI for portrait than landscape.
Yeah. Could the TMultiView be controlled by database data through live bindings?
I don't know specifically what you're asking, but one example I could give is the demo you saw today had a list view that was parented and aligned to the client within TMultiView, and that was bound to a prototype bind source via live binding. So if the question is, can you put controls into MultiView and bind them to via live bindings? Most certainly. You can put any type of UI element in there. You could put an edit control in there. You could bind it via live bindings to your database. So for example, I have cloud-based data. So that example, the HR manager example, I have another version of that demo where the list is populated with cloud data. So I have a data collection that lives in the cloud on my Kinvi backend, and I have it bound into my FDMEM table. So yes, you can easily control and bind UI elements via live bindings into your data source and parent them to TMultiView.
All right. Well, thanks, Sarina, for another great session.
Thank you.